So this is the Town of Richmond's Planning Commission, and it's our meeting for Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. We'd like to welcome everybody, and especially our new member, just recently appointed by the Select Board, which is Adam Wood. So Adam, do you want to just say a little something about yourself, and then we can go around and introduce the other commissioners?
Oh, I wasn't prepared to talk about myself. Is there anything in particular anyone would like to know, or should I just ramble
Just
for
like where you live, you know,
Yeah,
is
sure.
handy.
Security number and mother's maiden name.
Hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I live over on East Main Street, kind of right in the S curve when you go over the highway past the fire station. I'm a contractor now. I went to engineering school. I did that for a while in an office, and office life didn't agree with me entirely. So this was my compromise to do contracting and way too much office work, in my opinion. Trying to think what else. I'm on the fire department, which I guess is an asset and a liability, depending how you look at it. And trying to think of other important things. I think that's the high level of what I've done in town. I have 2 kids.
That's high level.
That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're glad that you're interested. We're glad that somehow we've said something that has pulled you into this process.
Yeah, try to keep my interest up long term. So
yeah. All right, so we could go around with Chris and Joy and Mark and myself, the other commissioners who are here. Just to introduce yourself, Chris.
Oh, sure. Hi, Adam. Nice to see you again. Yeah, I can't remember how long I've been on the Planning Commission. Virginia, can you? It's been several years now.
4 years. Yeah.
4 years. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I am going to miss the next meeting because I'll be on vacation.
Good for you.
Okay. And so where do you live and what do you do?
I live on West White Hill, and I am a former select board member and longtime member of the Energy Committee, and I spend my days doing energy efficiency program design and energy policy regulation development.
Excellent. Joy.
Hi, Adam. How are you? Adam used to work with us many years ago. And so he knows us pretty well. I don't know that I need to explain much to him. If anybody else wants to be filled in, I'd be happy to tell you about what I do for work, which is construction. We own a bunch of property in Richmond. And I've been on the Planning Commission. I don't even know how long. Chris, if you've been on here 4 years, I'm afraid to find out how many years I've been on.
Many years.
Yeah. And I'm happy to have you here.
Great. All right, Mark.
Greetings, Adam. Mark Fossil. I've had 2 kids who've gone through the school system and are out and about now. I work at an environmental testing laboratory. Been on the Planning Commission for 14 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah, seen a lot. Been interesting. Yeah, live up on Hillview Road, across from the Berry Farm. We got the big development going on next door to me, which is kind of exciting. Comes to residential development. So it's all good.
Great. Thank you. Lisa, we're just introducing ourselves a little bit to Adam.
Okay, there. I stopped frowning. Hi, Adam. Hey, welcome aboard. Thank you.
And so we're just saying like where we live so people kind of get a picture and what we do otherwise besides this work.
Okay. Do you want me to say anything? Or I think
Yeah,
Adam
go ahead.
Oh,
Where you live and what you do otherwise.
here, I live right here. I'll show you around. There we go. I live up in, right off of Heinsberg Road, or actually, yeah, it's Heinsberg Road, on Maple Hill, which is the next one from Cemetery, and almost a neighbor of Virginia's, and almost a neighbor of a couple other people too. So, been in town for 3 years. Originally from Virginia and going back there next month. So not for good, just to visit. And that's all I know.
Great. And she's on the select board, as you know, Adam, and knows how to fly planes. That's the
Yeah.
other thing you know about Lisa.
Yeah, anybody likes aviation, let me know, because the plane doesn't get enough use, and I can only go so many places, you know. I've been everywhere. So if anybody wants to go up, I'll take you.
Great.
Got my email.
Take you up. All right, let's see, that's it. So then there's me, I'm Virginia Clark, and I live on Hillview Road, some distance away from Mark, but not too far. And this is my second time being on the Planning Commission. I was back on the Planning Commission around 2000, been on the Select Board, been on this time around 4 years. And I'm a retired veterinarian from the Richmond Animal Hospital. But this is a long-term interest of mine. So anyway, glad to have you on board, Adam.
Thank you all for the introduction.
Virginia, you're sort of the newest member also, since you're reappointed, right? So,
Me and Chris.
right.
Yep, we're both reappointed.
That's
So
right. Yeah, you both
we're
were.
the three of us are new members.
Gluttons for
Good for
punishment.
you.
Yep. All right, so we'll move on then to number 2, review adjustments to the agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to say about that? Any adjustments that they want to make?
Well, I would like just to point out that the meeting minutes are for 4/19 and not for 5/3, because we did not have a meeting on 5/3. We had a meeting, but we didn't have minutes.
Well, we didn't
So-
have an actual meeting because there was
Right.
not a quorum. So we're hoping to do better and always have a quorum. So we now have 8 members from our 9-member board, so we need 5 for a quorum. Hopefully we'll be able to achieve that goal, and then we can move along.
Mhm.
So we will approve the minutes of 4/19. Also, the other thing that I thought we should probably add to this agenda right after the minutes, so 4B, is we need to do our organizational meeting, which is to elect our chair and vice chair. So we'll do that right after we look at the minutes. So if no one else has anything to say about the agenda, is there anyone here who would like to make a comment about something not on the agenda? So any of our guests, Kathleen and Gary, Aaron, any comments about things not on the agenda?
Silence.
Okay, hearing none, we will move on to item number 4 on our agenda, which is to review the minutes of 4/19. Does anyone have anything they would like to add to these minutes, corrections they would like to make to the minutes of 4/19? Okay, hearing none, seeing no hands, we will accept those minutes into the record as written and not worry about 5/3 because, as Keith said, there were no minutes. So moving on to 4B, which we added, we need to have an annual organizational meeting. So I'll open the floor to any nominations for chair. Lisa.
Virginia, I would nominate that Virginia Clark for chair.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mark. All right, are there any other nominations? Anybody want this job? It's available. I don't want to hog it, you know. So
You're good at it.
if anybody wants it, just speak up. This is the time. All right, not having people leaping forth, we can vote on my nomination renomination as chair. All in favor should say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I voted
Aye.
twice.
All right, so I will be happy to go on being chair. It's interesting,
Thank
very
you.
interesting work. And now we would like to have a vice chair, because if for some reason I can't be at a meeting, we'll need a vice chair, or if I can't sign some document, then we would need to have a vice chair. It's also really helpful to have another voice in the discussion when we're formulating policies. So if anybody feels they would like to do that at any level, at least at the legal level, you know, where there's somebody who could be in charge of the meeting if we needed it. So I'll open the floor to nominations for vice chair.
Virginia, I'm not volunteering. Could I just say something I was thinking?
Yes, please.
Okay, you kind of represent one place in Richmond, and I think if we had someone from kind of the other end of town or farther, in the other direction from town, would that be important? Because I know the vice chair, in addition to running the meeting in your absence, also, anybody from another area of the town, different area of the town, is probably gonna have a slightly different perspective. I mean, I know, for example, Chris lives out in the eastern part, Joy lives the western part. You're kind of more centralized. Adam is in town. Mark is kind of, let's see, north of center and so forth.
I'll take us out.
I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I think for planning issues, maybe more so than a lot of things, the familiarity with the locale might be more important.
Yeah, well, that would be great. And we've often talked about, for instance, having somebody from the village, having someone who
Mhm.
lives in the village represent a unique point of view versus someone who lives in the outlying areas,
Mhm.
someone who lives on the eastern end, the western end. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a good idea if people want to do it, I mean,
Right.
so,
I'm not
Mark,
volunteering, sorry.
well, you kind of live in my neighborhood,
Right.
and
right.
we both kind of live in Mark's neighborhood, and Joy
Yeah,
lives kind of
that's right. You're out
in that
both.
neighborhood.
Mhm.
All of us are over in that neighborhood over there towards Huntington, sort of
Mhm.
Heinsberg, Huntington way. Mark?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Adam Wood for vice chair for a strong, powerful introduction to the planning commission and its operations.
I
Chosen by
felt
fire.
that wind blowing that way.
Well, it's
I-
up to you, Adam. I mean, I don't want to throw you into something that you're kind of not really ready for, but it sort of depends, how you feel about it.
I guess I would willingly do it, but I will obviously need some mentoring from at least one person, probably many. So
Mark is volunteering for that, the mentor.
I think
We're
everyone's
training.
volunteering. That's what I was getting at.
Adam, I can tell you from 3 years on the planning commission, it's rare that Virginia's not there. There might have been once. And Ravi was filled in for you at that time. So yeah,
Well, I'm
nothing to
comfortable
fear.
running a meeting with Robert's rules and all that stuff. That's about the extent
you
of knowledge. So I can do that part.
Sounds good.
Okay, and I mean, hopefully we'll have, if you're in the loop with the early documents as they go out, if you have time with 2 small children, I don't know whether you ever have time for anything, but then your
It'll be a
voice
good
will,
break.
yeah, right. Sorry, honey, I
It's a
have to read
legitimate
the planning
excuse.
commission documents.
Exactly.
Joy, you had something.
I was gonna nominate Lisa, only because she's familiar with the meetings, and I mean, I've been on this thing for how long, and I wouldn't feel comfortable running a meeting, so I don't know about how Adam would. I don't know, I wouldn't want to do it if I were so new, but here you go. Not that I have anything against you, Adam. I'm saving you. You can thank me later.
Yeah, well, Lisa is the other person who's retired.
Yeah,
So
that's
this,
true.
this sometimes rises to the top of a qualification, having actually the time to do it. I don't know. Lisa, you've just taken on this other job whose meetings go till 11 o'clock at night, the select board.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
do you
Monday
feel
night
about
was a
that?
late one. Well, I appreciate that, Joy. I mean, it's an honor. I was thinking of nominating you, but I think you have a lot of business that
Not, yeah,
that
you don't want,
conflicts with serving, or voting at least. So that would put you in an awkward position, I think. So,
thank you.
yeah.
I mean, Lisa, you have the potential for being able to be at daytime meetings. If Keith and I are going to get together and talk about what we want to proceed with, or, how we want to structure something,
Mhm.
or have a field trip, to look at some area during the day, you seem like the only person who might even be able to do that because you're retired also.
Mhm.
But
I'll leave it up to you guys. I'm torn. I'm really busy with the select board. There's some issues on the plate right now that are probably once in a lifetime kind of issues. But I do have I haven't filled every hour of the day yet. So I like the planning commission. I feel really strongly about it. I've got a long association with planning commissions, and I'll let you guys vote it out.
okay, so would someone like to second one or the other of these nominations?
I would second Adam one.
You would second Adam Wood.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say about this?
It's almost like inbreeding.
I'll say that I know that it is a bit of a curve, and there are some added demands from being in the leadership posts that the rank and file don't have to wrestle with, which is understandable. And I know that can be a burden on a young man and with young kids and everything. But I think it'd be a great learning opportunity. And honestly, Virginia, you've done such a good job sharing that. I don't think the pressure would be too onerous. And honestly, the only reason why I didn't nominate Lisa is just because of the huge load that comes with being
Right.
is exhausting. I know it is, but
Thank you, Mark.
I personally would be happy with either choice. I think either one would be, I think, from different perspectives, really good.
Yep.
Can I make
Lisa.
a question, actually, Virginia?
Yes.
I guess we could have two vice chairs. There's no rule against that. I'm sort of alternate, two alternates.
Right. Do we care? I mean,
Mhm.
so
I guess the only case where that might be a real world.
you can participate in the discussions even if you're not the vice chair, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Like if we want to go on a field trip during the day or have a meeting during the day that we want another voice in, then presumably you would be able to participate. You don't have to be called the vice chair. So
True. Also, I was just thinking, Adam might get a lot of benefit from being a vice chair, but also it's kind of like jumping into the deep end of the pool. So if you know how to swim, that's great. But maybe
Yeah.
sharing that or on, flip-flopping or something would be a little bit more gentle or helpful.
Yeah. Keith, do you know if it's fine if we have two vice chairs? Does that make sense or does that not make sense?
I think that's fine. Yeah, I mean, you could have co-chairs, you could have vice chairs. I think that's fine.
Co-vice chairs. Okay, well, so how does everyone feel about the co-vice chair of Adam and Lisa? People feel good about that? Somebody could second Lisa's nomination?
I second Lisa Miller's nomination as co-vice
Okay,
chair.
great. They both seconded each other's
Got me
nomination
back.
for vice chair. So all in favor, so there's no other discussion about this issue? Seeing none, all in favor of 2 vice chairs, Adam Wood and Lisa Miller, should say aye and raise your hand.
I,
Aye.
Okay, great. So we have now 2 vice chairs. That's great. We should be well organized. So,
That doesn't necessarily follow.
no, but it's a start, and we'll try to, I mean, it does give us the opportunity of kind of dividing up the tasks a little bit if we need to divide up some tasks with between daytime meetings and whatever.
Mhm.
So, okay. So that's number 4B. And so we're going to move on to number 5 at 7:25. So this is a discussion that we're only going to open tonight with a half an hour discussion. Obviously, we're not going to be able to finish this whole discussion. It's going to be a long discussion, but we really wanted to get going on it. I am assuming that everyone has read the information that was... Hello? All right. That was submitted by Michelle and Zachary Beal about developing some housing in the IC district. So this was very interesting to me because it fits right in with one of our goals for working on the zoning at the moment, which is to remove the regulatory barriers to the development of housing. So it's an actual opportunity to do that. And so I wanted to open this discussion. If we could have the map, Keith, that would be great. The zoning map blown up as big as possible to look at the area that we're talking about.
Oh, hang on.
While he's doing that, so the area that we're talking about is the IC district, the industrial commercial district. Up around exit 11, we have 2 districts currently, the commercial district and the industrial commercial district. There's very little difference between them in terms of uses. And there are some issues with the way the zoning is arranged there. So this is a perfect opportunity to look at those districts and see if perhaps not only adding housing to those districts, but cleaning up some of the difficulties with those districts that currently exist, the ambiguities that exist in the zoning. So we'll look at it here in a minute, and then we'll ask Michelle if she wants to speak about it. But we'll look at the area first. Yeah, about 400% works pretty well, Keith. I found.
You're funny. Yes, I know. We got to get
Just
this
want to look at
cleaned up.
one property.
Whee!
So we're getting bigger. We're getting bigger. We're going to get in the middle, and then we're pretty good.
That's 175% there.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's probably big enough. So
Yes.
what we have here, what we're looking at here is the beige colored circles. That is the mobile home park. Okay. That is a giant neighborhood, by the way, a big neighborhood right there.
Mm-hmm.
And just to the northwest of that, we have the purple spiky area. That's an industrial commercial area. That's the area that we're talking about the development of. And then we also have the purple spikes down there near the circle, which is exit 11, and that purple spiky area in the middle of the dotted area is the Green Mountain Power solar array. And we also have the mobile station now in this area. As well, in this area, we have this red thing in the middle, which is commercial. And the difference between commercial and industrial commercial is fairly small, and we can go over those differences. And what I would like to propose is that we combine those into a single district, which we call either commercial or industrial commercial, and we allow housing in it. That's my baseline proposal, and we can go and talk from there about what that would entail. Joy.
Sorry to interrupt, Virginia, but I think when we look at this, because it sounds like we're going to be doing it for a while, I'd like to suggest that we look at a Google Earth map with this laid over it, so people really understand what we're talking about, because it's
Yes.
this doesn't mean much to me.
Yeah.
I know in theory what you're talking about, and I agree with what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think it would be helpful for us to really look at it from satellite view.
Yep.
Go on.
Well, I think from Google Earth Map, the parcel viewer, there's a number of ways that we can look in granularity at this area. There
And it
are,
might be that you guys prepare it for the next meeting so that it really actually has the zones on it or something, but it's tough to do it otherwise.
yep. Okay. Well, and that's partly what this meeting was going to be about, was what do we need to further look at this situation? You know, what is it exactly that we need? See, I don't find this view as useful as the parcel viewer, which actually has the parcels on it. But anyway, here's the area. Keith, you can point to what you're looking at.
Well, hang on a sec. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, right here is the Beal's property. They're the ones that are petitioning to have the zoning change at this point. And that's currently in the IC, or Industrial Commercial District. Obviously, everybody knows what this is here. That's right next door to, Hutchins and the Reclamation Center here. So we go up, and this whole area through here is residential, but it is in the IC district. And I could flip back to that. That's kind of the way you could look at that.
So currently, there are many residences in the IC district. There is no residential use allowed in either the IC district or the C district. So that's the issue, that's the concern. And of course, a way to do it is just add residential uses into the current IC district. But to me, this seems like a really good opportunity to fix some of these other problems, like the fact that half of the IC is already residential. Lisa, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to the dawn of zoning when incompatible land uses existed all over the place, and people finally came up with a better idea, which is zoning, and some limitation of what can occur in those zones, and trying to keep incompatible zones apart, or incompatible land uses apart from each other. And industrial and residential seem to fall into the incompatible categories in some ways. Now, what we're looking at, what we just saw, on the land there, doesn't look incompatible at all. There's plenty of green space and so forth. But what about development in the future in those zones, in that zone, if we're all commercial, IC, whatever? Would there need to be stricter standards for commercial operations if they abut residential properties that are by that time developed and lived in? Would there turn out to be some incompatibilities that we may not really be able to fix, since the zoning district is permitted to have housing and commercial operations nearby? Would there need to be some buffer? Would there need to be separations? I don't know. I don't have any answers, but I wanted to raise the question.
Yeah, well, that obviously would have to be considered. You do want to consider that whole neighborhood of 160 homes is right next door. And we don't have any separation standards. That little tiny red block, which is commercial for some reason, is a house site.
Oh, okay.
So, it's, this is why the whole situation is kind of questionable to me, the way it is set up. Joy, did you have another comment, or same hand as before? Okay. Yep. Okay. So that's just kind of laying out the issue. The issue is that the Beals would like to have some housing, and I'm going to get them to talk in a minute about it. The commercial and industrial commercial don't seem to have any real relationship to what is actually on the ground in
Yeah.
those districts. There are very few things that are different between the uses of IC and C. Why are they two different districts? We don't really have any industrial, if you would like to think, depending on what you think about as industry, we don't really have any industrial uses in either of those districts, the commercial or the IC.
Mhm.
So, so there's a number of things that we need to talk about. And what Keith and I thought maybe we could do is tonight is to decide if we wanted to go forward with thinking about this. And then we could identify what kinds of information we need, whether we need to do field trips, what about the outlying areas like the little IC area on Kenyon Road. We could start thinking about those topics if we thought that this was something that we wanted to get involved with. So maybe we could ask Michelle Beal if she would like to talk a little bit. Is she still here?
Yep, she is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, we were a little late to join. The link was broken, but we're here now. My name is Michelle Beal. My mother is Linda Donovan, who owns the Lucky Spot and some property in the industrial commercial area. We have not always lived in Richmond, but my mom has lived there with Bill Donovan for many years now. Actually, Bill's been there almost his whole life. And my husband here, Zach, we have been looking for housing since 2021. We're a young couple who both work in public service. I don't know if you guys got a chance to read our letter, but we kind of introduced ourselves a little more in that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we just have been desperate for housing, as a lot of young people in the state have been. And my parents offered us a really gracious piece of their land. And as we started looking into it, we realized that the zoning laws were not working in our favor, certainly in order to build any type of housing. They have a 10-acre lot in the IC district that we would really love to live in. But as we started digging more into it, we realized how much housing actually already exists in that area, which is kind of why we've started going down the rabbit hole of talking to some of the zoning, like Keith and Tyler in the town offices. But we are just fortunate to be here and listening in to the discussion you guys have. And we would love to be Richmond residents.
Great. Well, thanks for introducing yourselves and for, bringing up this opportunity for us, which I really regard as an opportunity to help with the housing situation, which is something that is a goal of the Planning Commission. So.
If I could add another comment, I think someone asked a question about like the boundaries between industry versus residential. And I just wanted to point out that like in the current zoning laws that I had noticed, there is room in IC to add PUDs already that exists. So I think we've already kind of blurred that line between residents existing in that area next to industry and commercial businesses. Just a talking point that I thought I'd add.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Virginia.
Well, I was just going to say that in looking through the zoning, PUDs and what we are calling residential PUDs are allowed in the IC district. So, and I couldn't really see any reason that you couldn't have a PUD consisting of one single family home.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, that's not what that concept is for. But on the other hand, it says that the residences in a residential PUD in the IC district could consist of any combination of single family homes, duplexes, multi-unit buildings. So how about a PUD with one single family home? I don't know if that's, we'll have to get Keith, who's in the zoning official position there to talk about that. But it doesn't make sense for really, if we're going to allow residences there, we should have a residential use in that district. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Hi, can anybody hear me?
Hello, Linda.
Hello?
Is this
Yes,
Linda Donovan?
it is. How are you?
Yes. I'm good. How are you, Linda?
Good. I just wanted to mention, one, I do not know what a PUD is. My daughter didn't fill me in on that. But I do want to mention that, I mean, being back here, we are surrounded by other residences, both that one house that you said is in the commercial district. And that's to the left of us. And then to the right of us are the trailers down actual Rogers, with two of them existing in actually Jericho because their driveway enters through Richmond. And our neighbors is Land Shapes right across from our driveway. And they are the most, I would not move. They're the most amazing neighbors. And I wanted you to know that Jeff is all in this project and he's actually willing to build the road for us, which is what he does for work.
Wow.
So
Cool.
I just wanted to share that with you.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Keith, I interrupted you. Did you have something you wanted to add there?
I know, just looking at the use tables and this plan unit development, we have two, it's a little odd the way they're set up in the zoning regulations. It's plan unit development, residential and plan unit development. I believe that it does fall in underneath that umbrella, but I would say that, I think Virginia and I discussed this a little bit today. We were talking about, what could we do? We could add residential use to the existing district. And then I think that would potentially do the job at this point, but that's not going to fix the overall area. And as Virginia said, this is an opportunity to move this forward and to do a holistic turn of events. I mean, if we were going to do just add the use to the district, you'd still have to require a public hearing. You'd still have to require going to the select board. And if you're doing that, let's clean this up. But just in your back pocket, all we need to actually do in order for the Beals to get a subdivision for a residence in there would be to change the use tables. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, great. And, I think it's when you really look at the uses in these two districts that currently exist and the other development parameters like the setbacks and all that, they're just not that different. They're not different enough that it really needs to be two separate districts. There are commercial uses in the commercial district and there are really commercial uses in the IC district. So anyway, so we're getting towards the end of the time that we have allotted for this discussion. But what I'd like to hear from planning commissioners is if you think this is worthwhile, that we get going on it, go and look at the area, mock something up so that we can take a look at what it, would entail. You all can be looking on your own at the use tables and the dimensionals and see if you see any problems there. Bring your problems to the next time we talk about this. I would like to continue with the village neighborhoods, but I think that we can do this, that we can run these together and make some serious progress and not make it take too long so that the Beals are not getting done what they need to do. So any comments or thoughts about this? Lisa?
Yeah, I can't find the button to raise my hand, so I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, good. Works.
Right. My first knee-jerk reaction was, oh no, it's an industrial commercial zone. But I didn't realize how kind of localized the industrial or commercial properties are, first of all. And second of all, how much residential there is there already. I didn't realize that. And how, there's plenty of open space. I guess I haven't looked at that zone except for the area more to the east at all. So this is, I'll consider this, but it's an interesting opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of housing already there. So,
Right,
and
I
you're
didn't
right
realize that.
next to this giant neighborhood of housing also. So,
Yeah.
Lisa, you would be in favor of us kind of proceeding along with thinking about this and,
I would. It's a compelling case. We need residential wherever we can provide it. And there's a lot of areas in the town where it's just not possible. It's either the slopes are too steep, or it's floodplain, or it's agricultural. It does need to stay that way. So, there's maybe, just a guess, maybe less than 10% of the town that's even feasible for more residential, leaving out ag-res. And
Right.
looks like this is one of those areas that might be feasible. So sure, let's look at it.
okay. And sort of a follow-up to that is that there will be some parts of this area that are not developable either,
Right,
because
right.
there's
Mhm.
slopes there and,
Mhm.
we haven't looked at the wetlands there. And so
Right.
we're not counting on this whole area being developed into housing because that
Exactly.
wouldn't happen either. That doesn't happen any area that we look
Oh,
at.
right.
There
It's
are
not
always
Kansas.
natural resources constraints.
Mhm.
So, Chris, what do you think? You think we should continue with this and try to work on it?
I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand too. For some reason, I've forgotten how to do that.
I don't see
Just
the
raise
little
your
icons.
hand.
I'm helpless without icons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely worth talking about. I think, we just want to keep in mind that the reason for putting industrial uses in their own zoning district is because of potential conflicts, with residences and with other activities. What we have, I think, is an organic situation where the residences and the industry that's there seem, as far as I know anyway, to get along pretty well. At least I haven't heard about there being a lot of conflict. But I think we need to keep that in mind for the future. If residential density goes up, if another industrial business goes in, are we going to, run into any of those conflicts? But certainly there doesn't seem to be a conflict now. So it's definitely seems appropriate to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the way the zoning has been for quite some time.
Right.
And those residences are there and they're not coming into the zoning administrator's office every week and complaining about the industry there. The space. Yeah. Anyway, anybody else?
Mark's got
So,
his hand up.
Mark, yes.
Yes,
Right.
hey there. Yeah, so under reactions, if you see that on the bottom menu,
Yeah.
there's a raise hand, the lower hand should show up, and
Oh,
Right.
there it is. Okay. Thank you.
sure, no problem.
Thanks.
That set aside, I just took a quick look at the table that Keith provided, and I didn't see dwelling as a primary use. I saw accessory dwellings
Right.
as a use in either district, but I
Yeah.
didn't see primary dwelling as a use. And I think we put accessory dwellings in there just because you have to have, we acknowledge that there are homes in that district, there are a couple, and they are should have the right to
Right.
do accessory structures to their residences without having to go before the DRB for that.
Right.
And I'm not sure when that was added, but I think it was something that was done possibly in the last 14 years, because it seems to ring a bell with me that's why they are. So the primary residences aren't an allowed use in either district right now.
That is correct.
No, there are no residential uses allowed
In either district.
in either district unless you go through the PUD, which is allowed in the IC district, but not the C district. You can have a
Okay.
residential PRD, maybe consisting of one house or any number of residences. So
Okay.
that's an ambiguity with our current regulation, which is a problem that we would like to fix because that doesn't really make sense.
That
So-
I agree. But that being said, these districts were sort of sketched out to be commercial for their convenience to the interstate, their convenience to main arteries that don't entail a lot of residential side road traffic. You don't have to go through Huntington Road to get to the industrial area. You know, you're going up Kenyon Road, that industrial area, which is really more than the sand pit right now, but could potentially be industrial development that doesn't impinge on bringing traffic through residential areas. All that being said, I am open to the idea of allowing something. Certainly sympathize with the Beals on their plight. I've got 7 residences going in next door if you're still shopping by the time those come in. So there are residences occurring and getting developed in Richmond. I do know that historically there's been a strong push to protect commercial tax base properties for development in Richmond. We dialed them way back on the Gateway. We dialed them back in the we've promoted other residential in other districts. These last 2 districts are the remnants of any type of commercial marketing. And if we were to have any commercial development in Richmond, those areas would be the place to go. Now, granted, they haven't been developed. And I know you look at Williston, you look at those areas and they don't have any commercial. They have so much commercial that, you know, that a lot of it's going unfulfilled. And I get it, there isn't a big demand for it now. But I do think that there is a reasonable contingent in the community that would want to preserve these commercial spaces for commercial, and honestly, there's no better place in Richmond for them than these designated areas now. So I'm open to the idea personally, but as a representative of the community, I think we've really got to network and communicate and get a buy-in from the community because of the hard commitment that these districts have to the commercial area. So that being said, yes, let's go forward with it. It's nothing I want to race through and switch to residential use, because right now it's a crazy residential market, and that's unfortunate. And believe me, I know. I'm gonna be looking at them before too long, and that's not the worst thing. There's other places where we can develop it. I know that you know, there's that property there that's easy enough to subdivide and put in a couple extra homes. Maybe that might be the exception to the rule, and parsing off that section of Rogers Lane to a residential use, because honestly, going back up into the woods and whatever, it doesn't necessarily lend itself well to uneven ground to commercial development. But I'm very cautious of protecting those districts as they are for the most part, because I do think that the bottom of Kenyon Road also has a lot of potential. I wouldn't want to just allow housing to go in there, because I know you can make a ton of money in a heartbeat putting that housing in and walking away. Well, where does that leave the community in the long run? So I think this warrants any major steps to restructuring both districts outright. I think has to involve a tremendous amount of community outreach and participation. Parsing off a small section of hilly Rogers Lane and calling that residential or mobile home or whatever purpose is, however we want to do that, doesn't seem unreasonable. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and it is part of this discussion that we have with almost every district that we talk about, which is the commercial aspect versus the housing aspect. We need housing. We have empty commercial spaces. How do you balance that? How do you save, the commercial that you need and yet not meet the needs that we see today? So it's certainly an ongoing dynamic tension between commercial and housing. So maybe we can think of some creative solutions. Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. The possibility of
You are muted.
I did that. I just did that. I don't know what the
Keith
hell I
cut
just
you
did.
off.
there, I'm unmuted. Okay.
There you
I
go.
have control.
Sorry about that.
Where was he? The possibility of a PUD in these zones, the IC, is intriguing. It doesn't require any changes, but there's baggage that comes with the PUD. First of all, we've tried to avoid that in other zones where possible because of the cost, the time that it takes. It's an almost interminable process, and it's probably not really. It works. I mean, it's feasible for a small development, but it's overkill. I mean, PUD, in my mind, PUD is geared more for, like a dozen houses or something larger, where there is some serious amount of horse trading and approximation that goes into it. And the PUD process kind of requires that to be laid on the table. That's a lot for a couple of houses. It's a pretty major process to go through. And I don't really know, I have to confess again, I don't really know what areas in there are suitable as they exist right now for commercial. Somebody can come in there with the pans and so forth and grade almost any area you want. If it's rock, they'll blast it. If it's soil, grade it flat, I would hate to see that. And commercial properties often, you look at Milton Cat or the other industrial, or I guess they're industrial properties along 117 there. They need flat land, and those kinds of things. A warehouse operation even isn't very noisy, but it needs flat land. You can have a warehouse that has a hill inside of it. It's just grading and almost floodplain-like terrain is most suitable for those things. And I'd hate to see the IC zone have someone come in and quite legally grade it flat for 40 acres and just stomp it flat. I'd feel really bad for the surrounding property owners, particularly if they're residential. So I guess I just kind of wanted to get that off my mind and not really come down in favor of one or the other. But I think comparing the PUD process, which is viable right now, versus rezoning this for residential is something that we should look at carefully, maybe with some hypothetical development sprinkled on there to see, give us a little bit better feel for road networks and so forth. And after that, I think let's put it to a vote. Let's get as much opinion as we can and see how it shakes out.
So a couple of points just to respond to that. And then Keith, one is Milton Cat, by the way, is in the commercial district. This is one of the things that doesn't make complete sense to me. Is Milton Cat is commercial, it's not IC. What's the difference? Why is that not? So anyway, so there's that. And the second one is that making residential uses go through the PUD process doesn't count as cutting regulatory barriers to housing. But anyway,
sure.
I get your point. So Keith.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that the residential PUD is not an allowable use in that zone. Only a PUD is allowed in that zone. I mean, if you look through the use tables, you'll see that PUD residential is called out in certain zones. or you can go through that path. But in this zone, it's just PUD, planned unit development. And typically, you wouldn't call it a planned unit development residential, you'd call it a planned residential development, or a PRD. At least that's in my experience. But just looking over this cursorily, and seeing the verbiage that's in other districts, they specifically are calling out the PUD residential as a PUD residential and not just PUD. So I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. It probably needs a little bit more clarity, which is what we're here for, and what we're asking for is to bring clarity to this whole situation.
So in my reading of 512.2 PUD, point A says a PUD or residential PUD may be permitted in the RCG, VC, and IC districts.
Right, we had seen that today. That's true.
Yeah. So you can't have a residential PUD in the IC district. For
Well,
some
why is-
reason, you can't have it in the commercial district, which is right next door to this district, but you can
Right.
have it. It's not listed as a
Right.
use. So
Mhm.
that's a problem. It's ambiguous as to whether you could put a residential, even though it technically allows you to put it in. It's not on the use list. So
Yeah, the passage would hold, and not the use table. I mean, what you were referencing would hold, in legally, put it to you that way. But it is ambiguous. But
yeah,
that's
it's
why we're
problematic.
talking about it.
Yeah, it's problematic, which is why we want to fix it. I mean, is it or isn't it?
Right.
So,
Right.
okay, so I think maybe we'll wrap up this discussion. It sounds like people are okay with going forward to at least think about what this would entail, and maybe people can go and look at the area if you want. I definitely plan to go and look at the area and see what it looks like, and maybe we can get the Beals to give us, or Linda to give us a little tour, so that we know what the area is like that we're talking about. What are the uses that are already there? Are there any really industrial uses there? I don't really think so, but so we'll do that for next time, and put out a strategy for going forward. So
We'll add that to the agenda for the 7th.
Yep,
As,
we'll put
as
that on
a quick discussion item or something along those lines.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
So anyway, so thanks for coming, Michelle and Zachary, and we're sympathetic to your
Mhm.
desires and want to just see what the best way forward is to allow some of what you want in there.
Yeah, thank you
Yes.
for listening to us.
Yes, thank you.
And let's be in touch, folks. Let's keep the lines of communication open.
Great, thank you.
You got it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Linda.
Yep. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so we can work on that in our 3-week window here to the next meeting. And so we'll move on to item 6, which is looking some more at our residential neighborhood districts that we've been working on. And we've had slowed down a bit with work on those districts as we waited for the dust to settle on S100, which is the big housing bill that was passed by both the House and the Senate and is likely to be signed or may have already been signed by the governor. Keith, do you know if it's been signed yet? Anyway, nobody's
it has not.
expecting him not to sign it. Nobody's expecting him
Right.
to veto it. So, so there are a few parts of S100 that are pertinent to our discussion of the neighborhoods. And the point of the whole bill, S100, was to make some mandatory changes in what is allowed by municipal planning commissions, what is required of municipal planning commissions to increase the amount of housing that we have. So they have encouraged municipalities up until now to do things that municipalities haven't really done. And so they're mandating that certain things be done as relates to municipal zoning, as well as regional planning, town planning, Act 250. There are changes across the board to all those areas, some changes. So we can look at a couple of the changes by looking at our residential north, let's say. Let's look at our residential north draft, number 10, that we had created, and talk about a couple of the changes that are going to be required by S100.
Oh, geez.
All right, so this is what we've got, and Keith has got the permitted uses down there at the bottom of your screen. Dwellings, multi-unit developments, and there's also been, throughout the S100 process, there's been this conflict or whatever between people wanting to call them multi-unit and multi-family, because multi-family is sort of out and multi-unit is sort of in, but so I don't know what we want to call them. We've traditionally called them multi-family, but a dwelling with 3 to 4 units is going to be required in any district that has residential uses and is served by municipal water and sewer. It's required to be a permitted use. At first, it started out being just an allowed use, and we thought, well, maybe you could then make it either permitted or conditional, but it turns out it is a permitted use in any residential district with municipal water and sewer. So both of our residential districts in the village are in that category.
Oh, okay.
So we have added it in as a permitted use. And we can talk about a couple of these all together if you want, unless anybody has something they want to say right away. The next thing that is in question is we come down here, back up to, if you go, to dimensional requirements. I don't know why the number is not in there, but the maximum residential density, does everyone see that? Maximum residential density, one
Yep.
dwelling unit for every, now there's supposed to be a number in there, and it's 8,500 square feet. We had originally had it at, in the north, we had talked about it at 5,000, one dwelling unit for every 5,000 square feet of land. That's a density of 8, approximately 8 units per acre. After thinking about the comments submitted by Christy last time, who would have preferred to have it at 10,000 square feet. I put in here, and why the number's not here, I don't really know, but I settled on the 5 units per acre, which is required by S100. So 5 units per acre is approximately 1 dwelling unit for every 8,712 feet, I think. So it's going to have to be 5 units per acre, whatever that shakes out to be. And in both of these districts, I added the 8,500 number, since we're trying to go with the round numbers for the planners and zoning administrators. So that's the second thing. 5 units per acre if there are residential uses and it's served by water and sewer. Okay, then we come down a little further. If we proceed on a little further,
So what happened is I swapped these out for the ones that you had a concern with the editing tool on,
Oh,
and we lost all the editing. That's what happened there.
oh, okay.
I mean,
So
I can pull them up, but
let me see if let me see if I can do this. No, I won't be able to do that either. So I guess go back to the ones that you had before.
that'll give me a second then, okay?
Yeah,
It shouldn't be that difficult, although it is me, so be patient.
okay. So
We were
the
on the
same is
north.
good. The same is going to be true with both the North and the South District. 3 and 4 units are going to have to be a permitted use, and 5 units per acre is going to have to be the minimum density, the maximum density, the required density. You will have to have at least 5 units per acre. The other thing that we added in that got deleted was the 2 principal residential structures per lot, which we put into the RC district. We can talk about that. Do we want that in this district? There are, there's some feeling that we don't necessarily want that in this district. There would be the potential for making it just a conditional use, which is not as rigorous as a permitted use, but still would allow you to do it with DRB review.
Okay, so here's the edited version.
Okay, so if you can read that, that's great. Looks good. Yeah, that's better. So a couple of other things that are in red that we should talk about are the lot frontage. We talked briefly about this, but what do we want the lot frontage to be in these areas? Do we want it to be 75 feet? If they're going to be small lots, like in the Village Residential North, if you can have quarter-acre lots, does it make sense to have 75 feet? So we reduced that to 60 feet. We need to know what kind of information it is that we need that's going to allow us to make this decision as to what this frontage should be. Do we want to look at other ordinances from neighboring towns? Do we want to go and measure lot frontages? So if you could kind of think about that, what information you would need to decide whether this is what we want or not. Then the whole district-specific developmental standards, we haven't really talked about at all. The only thing we've talked about is that maybe we don't want any developmental standards. Do we want a small number in those 2 RC districts? We had a lot of developmental standards because we were trying to achieve some goals. The village look, compatible residential and commercial, and in the gateway, the scenic entrance look. So, do we want to have these site design standards? We will have to have the additional multifamily housing standards if we're going to have as a permitted use 3 and 4 unit buildings. And we will have to have the multiple structures on a lot section if we're going to allow multiple structures on a lot. So I think that's good. You can ignore all those formatting comments. So, okay. So any questions or comments about, is this the north that we're looking at, Keith? Or is
This is the north. This is
the north that we're looking at? Okay, and we've got Gary and Kathleen, so maybe why don't you put up the south one while Lisa is making a comment, and then they can have theirs. Okay, she's canceling her comment. Adam.
I just had I guess more of a mechanical question.
Yeah.
So looking at, permitted uses with single families, duplexes, and multifamily, and then also the lot coverage requirements. Obviously, with a minimum lot size, there would only be one dwelling unit allowed per on a lot that size, based on the square footage requirements per unit. And so I guess my question would be, would it make sense to reconcile the minimum lot size with the amount that correlates to a single dwelling unit, so that we are not allocating land? You know, it's impossible to make a lot small enough for just one unit. You have some X percentage of land left over. So that'd be or something along those lines to reconcile those two.
Well,
things.
so if you have a lot, so you're thinking about in the
I guess
north.
maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way too. So.
Well, if I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. If you have a lot of 1/4 of an acre, that's 10,000 square feet, let's say approximately.
Yep.
And you have, so if the maximum density is 1 unit for every 8,500 square feet, you could only have one on that lot. But if you
Sure.
doubled it, you know, if you doubled that, it is possible, or tripled it, you know, you might be able
I
to
guess my question
add
was,
something in.
if we're going to pick, you know, approximately 1/5 of an acre as the amount of land required per dwelling unit, would it not make sense to make 1/5 of an acre, or some multiple of 1/5 of an acre, the minimum lot size, so that we're not, it seems like lining those two up would at minimum at least allocate that, I don't know,
Yeah.
allocate the land more efficiently. I think a lot of those lots are small enough that there's not going to be any significant subdivision, but
Yep.
seems.
Okay. So I do see your point. And interestingly, in the testimony, I read a lot of the written testimony for S100. A lot of people suggested that 5 units per acre should really be 4 units per acre, because that's what most people were having, you know, like 0.25 an acre is a very common lot size. So why didn't they make it 4 units per acre? That was submitted several times in written testimony, and it was not taken up. You know, the people who wrote this bill did not go there. So you're suggesting the other way, which kind of makes sense also. So we might want to fuss with those numbers.
Yeah, I'm not advocating. I guess my point was not to advocate specifically for more density. It just seems like it would make sense to make those two requirements overlap where possible. So,
yeah. Well,
I don't
think
think we don't have leeway to do the opposite.
Right.
We can't change it, so we're stuck. You know,
I think it's awkward that they made it this way with the number 5 instead of the number 4, but we're stuck with it. So I think we should consider that, take that under consideration and think about that, because I get your point. All right. So the same kinds of issues we have with the Village Residential Neighborhood South. One thing so up in the features that we have in both of these, we've added housing types may be varied, including 3 to 4 unit multifamily dwellings. So we've had to add that if we're going to have them as permitted uses. In the South, we also added the ability of the Round Church to host weddings, concerts, and other events with on-site parking. This is actually covered in an ordinance, so it's probably not necessary to put that in. I know Gary brought this question up before about allowing the Round Church to continue to do what it does. This would just be like an educational thing that we are expecting that will be a feature of this district. It is allowed by the ordinance. Keith can talk about that if you want to talk more about that. Then we go moving along, we see that we're also adding under permitted uses, we should be adding dwellings, 3 to 4 units. So why that's not in there, I don't really know, but these are all draft documents. So it's going to have to be in there as a permitted use. it's still in conditional use, which was where we had it originally. It should be up in permitted use. So
Mhm.
we'll fix that. We added a childcare facility because we know we don't have enough of those. That's for the large home-based, which there aren't any of, and it probably won't ever be any, but we put it in to have a complete spectrum of childcare. All right, moving on. Supported housing facility we added in as a housing use. 2 principal structures hosting residential uses on a lot as a conditional use. In the RC districts, it's a permitted use, but in these districts, it could be a conditional use, a little more review. Maximum residential density, 1 dwelling for every 10,000 square feet, which is going to have to be for every 8,500 or 8, 7, 12 feet. And because there's additional density, we made a little more maximum lot coverage, 50% from 40%. Kathleen, I think you and I had talked about this at one point. And then as we go to the bottom, we also see that we didn't really talk about the dimensional standards or the site design, not the dimensional standards, but the site design standards. These are pretty basic. We will have to have the additional multifamily housing standards if we have 3 and 4 units. And we will have to have the multiple structures on a lot. We don't need that word in blue, developable. We're going to get rid of that, but we can have that second comment in blue with an attorney review of such arrangements. We talked about that and people like that being in there. Traffic impact we got rid of because Chris Cole doesn't really think we have anywhere in these districts that you could generate enough use for it to be problematic. So I don't know, Keith, if you want to talk about that more at some point. Lisa, you had your hand up.
Yeah, am I muted? You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Virginia, I was wondering how tall is the round church? Do we have ground to steeple height on that? And it's okay if we don't, but I was
Gary
just
might
wondering-
know. Is Gary is still on?
Oh, right, he was here.
Yeah, it's 60 feet.
Ah, okay. I was trying to
Well,
consider 35-foot buildings, maximum up to, and would that block some of the view shed, particularly to the east of the round church? And I'm not sure, but if it's 60 feet, then maybe not so much of a concern.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take 25 feet off of the top of that, so.
That should go over well.
That should go over real well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All
And
right. So I'm wondering, Kathleen and Gary, if you want to talk about these new S100 features, or, I mean, I don't know what exactly you can say about them, but since they're going to be mandated, or any of the other things that we're seeing here.
So I guess I think at this point, it would be really helpful to engage people from the neighborhoods. I know you've wanted to wait until you have enough in place, but these are significant changes. And even though some are mandated by the state, I think people would really benefit from understanding where things lie and what potential flexibility there is to not have, or to like complete wholesale changes versus changes that are really in keeping with the neighborhoods. And whether it's north or south, I think that's really important at this point before going too much further with drafting. And in terms of the question about going down to 1/5 acre, like 8,500 square feet in the north. I think that would be a huge change, and you don't need to. I mean, one of the things is we do have different sized parcels now, so to allow what makes sense for a larger parcel versus a smaller parcel, I think it really, again, there should be discussion if you're going to be changing either district's minimum lot size much more than what you had put in place, then again, those are going to be significant changes that warrant everyone's attention, and people are not aware of all this right now. And I guess I have questions about the two principal structures on a lot and why you're thinking about that for the south versus the north residential neighborhoods. And yeah, why do you really want to push that in our area?
You see a difference there between the north and the south.
Well, I'm not sure that two principal structures on a lot make sense in either of these neighborhoods. I can understand it for the districts where you've just been finishing your work. Those are more commercial based. So I just think more discussion might be helpful. So people can understand why you are recommending that and to hear from people about it. And
Kathleen, do you think it would be helpful to have a whole meeting where the public is invited to talk just about S100 and the changes that are going to be mandated? Or
well, I think like it could be talking about our neighborhoods certainly as well, because some are related. Some of the changes you're proposing are related to S100, and some have been percolating for a while, and I think they all are worth discussing.
Yep. Okay. Great point. Allison.
Yes. I find this mandate astonishing, and I guess I just want to know: is it stated that this is what we have to do, or this is what we're able to do?
This is what we have to do. This is what we're required to do. And I think I put in the memo a couple of quotes taken out of S100. Let's see if I can find them.
Has the governor signed this?
I don't think he's signed it yet, but he's expected to sign it. So, for instance, I can read you one, and we can put a link to the actual document. So here's this section 4412, which is the prohibited effects. So this is the 24 VSA 4412. Tells you what you can't do in your municipal zoning. Section D, in any district that is served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure that allows residential development, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be a permitted use.
I see.
So it's telling you that you have to allow them.
I see.
Because it shall be a permitted use. So that's a direct quote. And then you come down to section E, section 12, I guess, of 4412. In any area served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure that allows residential development, bylaws shall establish lot and building dimensional standards that allow 5 or more dwelling units per acre for each allowed residential use.
5 or more.
Yeah, you can have more. You could have 8, or 10, or
But
Paulina Court, it has 15 units per acre, for instance. I mean, it says you can, you shall allow 5 or more.
I I don't believe this.
Yeah,
And
well, the
just,
League of Cities and
yeah.
Towns had trouble believing it too, in a way. Some of the people
Yeah.
there said you're eroding municipal control and what you can do with your zoning and
Well, it's not just municipal control, it's municipal safety. I mean, just the size of the lot is not the only parameter. There's how wide is the road that leads to them? Is there enough parking place? There's some other parameters that don't seem to be mentioned in this.
well, I mean, the other parameters would have to be taken into consideration if it doesn't meet the other parameters, right? Keith, is that correct?
Well, it's what you're dealing with here is this is the baseline. So, I mean, this is the minimum that is required, is what they're offering to you. And if you're talking about parameters, but keep in mind everything that they're dealing with, or what we're going to be dealing with, is on sewer and water. You have infrastructure in place. So, that's the main thing that we're looking at here.
But that's not the only infrastructure. Yeah, I'm not arguing with you, Keith.
No,
Yeah,
I still haven't gotten my arms around the whole statute, to be honest with
I
you.
just find this, I would not be surprised if the governor didn't sign this, but anyway, I guess we have to wait and see, but
He's pretty favorable apparently towards it because it will allow for more housing to be built.
yeah, well,
That's what he says.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted, it's not your fault, Virginia.
Yep.
I just wanted that clarification of what this actually, in fact, entails.
yes.
Oh my goodness.
Well, in my memo, I did put a few points down from this, but we're all going to have to read this thing
Yeah.
so
And
that we can believe what it says and understand what it says.
Yeah, I do want to provide some sort of guidance at the next meeting. It might be not totally inclusive of everything that's in that statute, but at least I got to hit the salient points, if not only for my edification, for everybody else's. So that's what we plan on providing. This is an educational. We have to provide education on this.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
I don't know. I even wonder if this is not some kind of infringement of individual property rights. But that's the question.
It was discussed for sure. Yep.
Yeah. Well, zoning is, you can look at it as an infringement of individual property rights. Zoning. But it has been tested in the courts a lot of times that zoning is something that is allowed to be done. So this is just adding some parameters to it that are new and different and more, going to be less popular. But we have a housing problem. So this is the way that they have decided to approach the housing problem. Gary.
No, I like Kathleen's idea of having, the districts get caught up on what this law means.
Mm-hmm.
I also agree with Adam that, to me, it really makes sense. And part of this is a question. If we had 8,500 square feet per lot it comes out to, if it was square, 92 by 92, not that much different than the 10,000 you had before, which is 100 by 100. So I kind of think that size lot in the village on public water and sewer, not unreasonable. 92 by 92. Seems to me that if we had the language that you could have a single lot, of 8,500, then you wouldn't necessarily have to get into that two principal structures on a lot, which to me legally would be a cleaner way to do it. That people could just have individual lots if they want to. So to me, it should be left. Yeah. So if you say you had an acre and you got the right to do 5 units, so you could do 5 single family, you could do a quadplex and a single family, you could do a 3 and a 2, you could do 2 duplexes and a single family. There's a lot of ways to get to that density, and I don't think Richmond should necessarily rule out any of those choices.
So what was your first statement about the 8,500 square feet, that was?
It's 92, if it's a square, 92 feet by 92 feet. It's not that far off from the 10,000, which you had before, which was 100 by 100. It's just taking 8 feet off. I don't think it's unreasonable to have a village lot that's that size. I mean, I think there are village lots probably smaller than that now.
Yeah, there are. Yeah. Okay, Mark.
Hey there. Did you happen to hear when this was supposed to be imposed?
Well,
Is there like
yeah,
a deadline where the town needs to have their zoning rework to have this done? Because we just did residential commercial, and I'm not sure we satisfied those requirements.
right. Yep. No, I don't find anywhere in the 45 pages of this bill that states how long towns have to comply with this. That would be one question. The other question is, if the town's own zoning doesn't comply, would the state's law, would the statute rule?
Right.
I don't know the
And how
answer to
long do we
that.
have
So
before
yeah, I don't know. And that's something we definitely have to find out. And we are hoping that we're going to have more guidance, not only at our level, but, that the state legislative council people are going to provide more guidance about that. How long do we have? 2 years to put this in our zoning? Does it have to be put in next week? Does it, that's the question that is, I haven't found an answer to yet. I don't know, Keith, if you found any answer to that?
No, I mean, it's not that I haven't found, I'm not really looking at that. I know as soon as the governor signs it, it is law. And it is enacted and it must be followed. As far as us updating our zoning regulations, well, that is obviously a breathing and working document. And, we as zoning administrators and planners have to abide by that until we get everything updated. So that would be what is considered a technical update.
So that would be a good question to find out sooner rather than later. I
Yeah.
guess the other thing is it wouldn't be bad to have our rep.
She's coming.
Oh, you got something scheduled with her coming down the pike? That'd be awesome.
But she would like to have people's questions in particular, because obviously she'll have a limited amount of time with us. So you'll want to have your
I can come up with a
questions
list.
put together if possible. There are some things in this bill that do have dates, that are dated items. For instance, something that Chris Scrando will be interested in is that a committee is being formed to figure out how to make the RBs and the CBs more effective. We've talked on this committee before about the fact that we have RBs and CBs, building energy building standards that aren't, they're self certified, and they're not really being
They're pretty useless.
done correctly. 50% of them, 54% of them or something. There's a number in there. So for 1 year, with a report due at the end of December 2023, there's going to be a group of, I don't know who, they've got it all listed, who is going to represent which group, to study how to make CBs and RBs more widely effective. So, you know, that's got a date. It's got an actual date on it, and then presumably there will be a report by that committee at the end of the time, and then there will be some other things about RBs and CBs that we'll probably have to put in our zoning. You know,
And,
this is especially for towns that don't have a staff that can do that, you know, don't have a big, like, building code staff and so forth.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind too, in the same time frame, is that the guidelines from DOE for the Inflation Reduction Act incentives for decarbonizing, you know, building heating systems and stuff like that are going to come out, or should come out in the next few months. So that's all going to be part of that mix as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to make sure that everybody knows what CVs and RVs are. I mean, one is commercial and one is residential. And it's basically it's the energy efficiency of a structure, just to let everybody know, for those who don't know.
And is that a legislative committee you're talking about, Virginia?
Yeah, it's a legislative committee, and it has a whole bunch of other people on it as well. Let's see, I don't know. I forget all who they are, but like maybe a builder and a PUC somebody, and there's a whole bunch of people, groups that have to be represented on this committee. Oh, a racial equity person. Let's see. It's a council who's going to identify structural changes to support the improvement of these standards. So anyway, I can't find it right now, but there's a whole bunch of different people who are required to be on this group.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
Can I continue?
Mark.
Yes, we went off on a bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. It's good stuff. And honestly, I'm all over RBs and CB standards. I think they're wonderful things that if the state is mandating it statewide, that hopefully they come up with some sort of enforcement policy. So that being said, though, circling back to the density in S100. So they're saying that you have to be able to put 5 units. You have to allow it to 5 units per acre. Density standard of 8,500. But are they saying that the lot size must be reduced to 8,500? Or so we can set pretty much any lot size we want.
Mm-hmm.
We set a lot size, and I'll specify too again, 8,712, which means that, you know, we could round off at 8,700 too, if people are concerned about density. But even further, more our lot size, if we don't go below a 1/4 acre, which is 10,000, well, that's still 1 unit per, what's that, 1,100 and change square feet. If we have 1/4 acre zoning, then that's still only 1 unit per lot. So there's things that are still in our control that we can use to mitigate this demand for 5 unit per acre zoning. You know, if we have 1 acre lot, then yeah, theoretically, I guess we have to allow 5 units on that.
Right.
But if we have half acre, well, that's only 2 lots, two units. If it's per acre, it's 1. Am I right?
2.5 units.
Yeah, but
on
we
a
won't
half
have
an acre.
0.5, so we're talking two units. We can't have half units, so theoretically, then we're still have a lot of control on the local level to mitigate these state mandates that are coming at us. Not that I'm all opposed to increasing density, living up here in the boonies with 7 houses going in next door, all on more than 1 acre a pop. So it's a different story if I were living in the village and I had neighbors on either side and one had, an acre of land, and all of a sudden I have 5 units like right next door. So there's things that we can do that I think we need to probably get some answers on what these regulations are actually telling us we have to do before we bring it to the community, as much as I absolutely endorse making sure that we've got full neighborhood participation and outreach before we push these changes any further forward. But I would like to see what the state is actually really mandating us. We need to get some answers on that before we can really.
Yeah, we'll definitely get you that.
Yep.
I mean, I need it for my, I need it for my edification too, so.
Yeah, awesome. And the timeline for the residential commercial would be good.
Yep. So we're going to have that on the agenda for our next meeting as well, is more information about S100. There may be some more guidance coming down from the state that, we'll be able to hopefully put it in some kind of a digestible format. Anybody can go and read it if you want to look at it and start getting an opinion that way about what it's saying. And then Jana is going to come, but she would like to know exactly what we want to know. I don't think we want to just say, could you tell us what's required by S100? Because that's a conversation that's going to be longer than the time that we have available. So the more specific we can be about the questions that we have, I think the better things will go. Allison?
Yeah, thank you, Virginia. I do have a question. I've also heard over the radio and some discussions that there is a push to preserve more open space in Vermont as well. And what I'm wondering is this proposal about having more people able to live in the areas that already have an infrastructure of sewer and water, to centralize the population and population growth in those areas, so that in fact, in balance, they may be emphasizing that there is more open space to be preserved as open space. And I would like to understand better if that was part of the philosophy that the legislature had in coming up with this whole design.
Well, if you're talking about the 30 by 30, the proposed 30 by 30 bill, which is that 30% of Vermont to be preserved by 30/30, 50% by 50/50. So that's definitely on the legislator's mind.
Yes,
Climate change is on their minds big time.
Yeah.
It's a problem. So
Yeah.
they're trying to balance these different crises that we have. We have the housing crisis, we have the climate crisis, which requires the preservation of open space. So anyway, we can get Jana to talk about that maybe, is what the role that's playing. Certainly it's more efficient to have people living where there's already infrastructure. But Gary, I think you had a hand up. And then, so we've got like 10 minutes. So in a minute after these next 2 questions, we'll wrap this discussion up and just talk about a couple of little logistics things. And these things are going to be on our agenda next time. So we'll go from here. Anyway, Gary.
Well, I guess my question would be on, Mark's idea. To me, it sounds like trying to game the system a little bit. If the law is you got to have 5 per acre, can you really manipulate the lot size in hopes that you don't get 5 per acre? That doesn't seem like it's really living up to the spirit of what the law is trying to do. And so that's my question to the state rep is, what are the boundaries of does 5 really mean 5, or does 5 mean, well, it says 5, but we can game it down to 4 or something? That's all I got.
Okay, and just because if you have your maximum density as 5 units per acre, there's still the natural resources constraints. If you have a half an acre lot that most of it is slope, you're not going to be able to reach that density. You're just not, because there are other constraints. So it's a good question. Anyway, Lisa.
Virginia, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask that sort of, not every site is, flat earth, well drained and all that stuff. And can any town, cut back on the density corresponding to the realities on the ground that only the town knows about and the state doesn't know about those? There needs to be some offset, or whatever you want to call it, to density to allow for site constraints that are just unique to a particular site or a few sites. In our north and south village residential areas, we probably don't have much of that, but maybe we do. I don't know what's under the ground. So, and one thing I want to bring up is that the village residential neighborhood south has a constraint on the sewer system because it's piped. I mean, it's pumped across the river, and there's going to be a point. I don't know where we are capacity wise, compared to 100%, but when we reach that, and it probably wouldn't take full development on the south side to reach the maximum capacity of that pump. That's the step change to pump any more sewage is essentially doubling the cost of the sewer system for what, 1 more property, 2 more properties. That should be able to be used by the town as a limiter to at least the rate of expansion, if not the overall expansion on the south residential neighborhood, I think. But maybe they don't see it that way.
Yeah, well, there is a whole section in S100 that talks about the definition of served by municipal water and sewer.
Okay, because currently
lots of exemptions
okay,
from what it means to be, for instance, if there's no capacity of your system to handle it, it doesn't have to be considered served by water and sewer.
Okay,
so there's
good.
a whole
Well,
list
that's
of them
reality.
that are complicated to read because there's a lot of double negatives and stuff in there. But anyway, if you read through those, you can see that they have allowed for situations where you can't do it. Really.
Okay, well, I suspect some of those are going to apply to us. So maybe we should,
well,
start a list of those.
Yeah, they're in there anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
So last comment, Mark, and then we'll go to wrapping up.
In response to Lisa's observation, our treatment system and water system have huge capacity. We just upgraded the holding tank to a massive capacity, far above our current standards. Our septic has been a big problem ever since the Richmond cheese factory closed down. In fact, we bring in a tremendous amount of, thanks to Kendall's savvy business sense, a tremendous amount of portable septic discharge tanks that we need just to maintain our system at what it is. So one, we're getting paid more than we would with a normal residential use. We make more money per pound on that, and we needed to keep our system running anyhow. So
they're at about half capacity.
Those are not limitations. So.
I'm just thinking crossing the river though. That's a pretty big infrastructure cost, to take it from south to north.
Either just did redo those lines or are about to redo those lines underneath the bridge.
Okay.
So even going to the south end, I think we've got the capacity for pumping. I don't think those are. But one thing I wanted to add, and I apologize for not bringing this up in the open forum, but I was kind of wondering what those changes were to the zoning regulations that the select board told us we had to make changes to. Do we have a recap on that, or markup of that document so that we know what they did and whether or not the commission as a whole is concerned about that or is indifferent to the changes they made?
So the only change they made was that they removed the Jericho Road facing lots from the Village RC district. That was the only change that they made. And it was a change in the map. And the
Do we have that
planning
map?
commission has nothing to say about it. You know, the planning commission is not asked to give an opinion about the changes that they made.
Well, no, we're not allowed to change it now that it's gone to them, but we certainly can offer an opinion on that. Can't
So
we?
yeah, so there's a new map, and Keith, if you could send the planning commissioners the map that the select board approved, that
No,
would
I
be
don't have-
great.
I don't have that geared up, but I can send that to you, absolutely.
Yeah, some
I'm-
other time, not right now, but
They haven't
so-
approved it yet.
and they haven't approved it. The public hearing is on June 5th.
Public hearings on June 5th, so that
Yeah.
will be before our next meeting, right?
Mhm.
So 5th is our first meeting in June.
It's the 7th.
The
Ours
Ours
7th.
would be the 7th, yep. And what
So
we
what-
did was we submitted a list of pros and cons, which is what the planning commission had asked us to submit, was a list of pros and cons of the Jericho Road lots. And that's what we did. And Keith and Lisa and I walked around the neighborhood and looked at them, looked at the lots carefully, and were not that impressed with the development potential. We submitted the list of pros and cons, and they wish to remove those lots.
So I'm confused about that. When we met last, we had talked about we really couldn't do anything about that. And so we didn't want to have another meeting to discuss it. It's sort of an emergency meeting since we didn't have a formal meeting on the 3rd. But we were basically I thought we were just making those changes. I didn't know we had an opportunity to get together as a commission and provide feedback for that. And now you have a list of pros and cons. Did we see
They
that?
already saw that before. They saw it before their hearing, their first
Pros
hearing,
and cons?
the list of pros and cons.
For including
For including them or not including them.
so those will revert back to their old zoning regs?
Yep, they will revert back to the HDR.
And that's going to include all of the properties, including the ones near the intersection?
All of the Jericho
Everything?
Road facing lots.
Wow.
Hmm.
Well, that is unfortunate. Good to know, but unfortunate. So that's the only change. And I'm sorry, I don't remember seeing that list. Was that in the May 3rd packet that we just didn't really get into because we didn't have a meeting? Your pros and cons list?
Yes, that was going to be talked about at the May 3rd meeting.
So if we go back to the May 3rd documents.
I don't know if the list was actually in there, but it was on the agenda to discuss
Because I'll probably be going to that June 5th meeting. I'd love to see what the commission provides for pros and cons.
Keith can show you that. Can send around to the commissioners the list of pros and cons and the map with the changes that they made.
That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess any of us are welcome to go to the June 5th meeting and talk about it. This is their final hearing on the changes.
Yeah, as long as we don't speak as representatives of
Correct.
the planning commission, but as members of the planning commission, we're perfectly free to voice our own opinions and our own deliberations.
Mhm.
But you are a citizen of this town, so yeah, absolutely.
With an inside scoop on the decision-making process, which, shouldn't be hidden.
At their hearing, they did have people speak on both sides. You know, other citizens talk about being in favor of retaining them and in favor of giving them up.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
Yeah, I'd love to see that, those documents, Chris. Keith, thank you.
You got, yep.
okay, so the only other thing that we want to talk about is our logistics of our meetings. Do we want to continue to have them by remote only? Do we want to always have a presence in the town center? I don't particularly want to just go to the town center if it's just going to be me. I think if we have public hearings, we need to have a presence in the town center. And, you know, at least I can go and Keith can go if there's going to be a public hearing. Other people could go if they wanted to the town center. What do people feel about this? I mean, do you think we need a presence at the town center for all of our meetings, or is this fine? Joy.
I actually think the online meetings make it easier for people to attend. They're at their homes, they have their kids, they don't have to get a sitter,
Yeah.
eat dinner. I mean, it's just made it so much easier for people to be able to attend, including me coming to the meetings. So I
I agree
don't
with that.
think we need to go into the town center unless we have a hearing.
Or public outreach.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Or public outreach. I mean, you know, so what if we want to talk about the residential neighborhoods with the public, not a hearing, but just a discussion? Would we like to state as, you know, I mean, I was just looking to have some kind of a policy about when we do what. You know, mostly we do it online, but then are there some times that we're always going to be there so that people will know that they can come? Because we've had people go to the town center, nobody's there because now we're all remote. So let's say we're going to invite the neighborhood north, or both the neighborhood north and the neighborhood south, to come and talk about their neighborhoods. Do we want to have a presence at the town center, or?
That should be there. It's too hard to do online with multiple people.
Do we have to have a set policy though, or can we play this by ear? It seems like the circumstances are going to dictate what's the right kind of format.
Well, we can play it by ear as long as everybody looks at the agenda and, you know, the potential people who are involved can clearly see whether it's going to be online or in person. I just don't want people showing up at the town center if there's not going to be anyone there. I mean, we assume people will see that, you know, that's why I was interested in having a policy. For instance, if we only have a presence there when there's a hearing, then that's one thing. People will know for hearings that they can come to the town center. Maybe you disagree. I mean, that's fine if you want to just play it by ear. If everybody wants to do it that way, that's what you want.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Mark, what?
Lisa has her hand risen.
Oh, Lisa. Hi.
Yeah, Virginia. Thanks, Mark. I think, you know, first of all, if we're going to invite people to comment, I think we should hear them face to face. And it also allows for, you know, kind of like multiple responses at the same time. And we can filter those out with our ears, but it's really hard online. And the second thing is what was the second thing? If we are expecting a large amount of commentary or a lot of people or both, it's probably easier to do in person. Again, for the same reasons. It's just easier to keep order. It's easier to get half sentences and, you know, then circle back to someone who rethought their question. There's certain things online that are just really tough to keep track of, I think.
But I think it's going to have to be hybrid. You know, I don't think we're ever going to be able to go back to not allowing for people to come on Zoom. It's going to have to be a hybrid meeting.
I think so. Yeah. People are so used to that. It's there are people who probably wouldn't show up if it wasn't hybrid, if it wasn't online, if it wasn't on Zoom. Right. So, you know, they count. If they're not heard, it's something that will fester and grow. until it has to be heard. So let's hear everyone that we can, whenever we can. But yeah, if we have to do it hybrid, well, then we got to do it hybrid. But I think on a real presence, a personal presence for public hearings, and also if we've invited the public, I think it should be in person, hybrid, I guess.
Yeah, hybrid, it'll be. Mark?
Lisa said it. I totally
Okay.
agree with what she said. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so we'll say in general, if we're going to invite the public to come in either for a formal public hearing or for an informational session or discussion or information gathering session, then we will have a presence at the town center, and you can join either on Zoom or at the town center.
You know what, why don't we define it that way? We have like, say, 3 definitions of the kind of procedures we're going to have. And then we say for this, we do hybrid. For this, we'll do it online. For this, we'll do it in some other town. But that would help, I think, if we have a short index of what we might have and how it's going to be held.
Okay,
And I think it'll help Keith out too, and you.
Yeah.
Just
so
knowing
we'll put that together and have that for next time, and you all can look at it.
Mhm.
So, all right, so Chris and Joy are leaving. So,
Motion? Chris, you
you
still
can have
here
a
to?
motion.
I think Adam should make the motion to adjourn. It's up to you.
Inaugural meeting.
Sure. Make a motion,
There
we
you go.
adjourn at 1907.
Okay, Adam is making the motion to adjourn.
21:07.
Mark is agreeing to second it. If there is anybody who, is there anybody who objects? Nobody
Not
objects, so we're going to consider that it is a unanimously made motion. Do we have enough people to have this motion? I don't know, but I don't think you need a motion.
Mhm.
Yep, you're good.
All right, great.
Thanks,
Very
everyone.
good. Thanks.
Thank you.
And look
Night,
for
all.
these same topics coming up. So whatever thinking
Again
you
and
want to
again.
do about them
Yeah.
is good. So great.
Okey dokey.
Wow.
Thanks. Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.